Let's talk about military spending. Defense budgets are planned out every year by our governments, and we presume that all of these big financial decisions have been made after some sort of sound analysis.
But what even is that? Scientists and experts keep warning us that climate change is our greatest threat. So why does every sound analysis end up in more arms manufacturing and exports, when this industry is a massive contributor to climate change? And what role do unelected officials like lobbyists play in the process that creates this so-called sound analysis? In this 7-video series, we'll explore how our defense systems need rethinking and invite you to join our community of modern-day peacemakers.
Most of us have heard about lobbyists, especially when it comes to our politics and our policies. Lobbying is essentially any attempt by either individuals or private interest groups to influence the decisions of government, usually to their advantage.
Lobbying varies from country to country. In the UK, British arms company BAE Systems has had a whopping 1,259 meetings with the government since 2007, over 1,000 of which were just with the Ministry of Defence.
And between the MOD and BAE, they have 17 revolvers, meaning 17 people whose jobs switch between government and BAE. So they low-key just have inside people at all times when requesting export licenses or government contracts. Right, cool. Yeah, okay. Even the House of Lords gets special treatments ahead of big events. Before the 2019 Defense Security Equipment International, also known as DICE, Arms Fair, happening in London, at least 27 members of the House of Lords were treated to dinner, lunches, drinks, Christmas concerts, rugby games, and overnight stays from arms firms.
Need a shocking example of when we have not based our defense spending on a sound analysis, but instead let lobbyists have their way? Coming right up.
Lockheed Martin lobbied the US Congress to finance their new and revolutionary fighter jets. They promised that they would bring in loads of money and bad jobs. But the reality was much tougher to swallow than that.
Lockheed Martin said they could build it for $219 billion. Did I say 219? Sorry, they underestimated. The onboard computers weren't working. But they said they'd fix it. The plane was too heavy. But they said they'd fix that. And now, the power cuts out mid-flight. They'll fix that. That high-tech pilot's helmet is too high-tech. Pilot can't see. They said they'd fix that. So, here we are. The F-35 is the most expensive weapon in history. And taxpayers are still spending money on it. What else could we do with over $1 trillion that wouldn't be a colossal waste?
The support came from a huge lobbying budget, which saw 39 members of Congress receive a combined total of $1.9 million. With the chair of the House of Armed Services Committee getting a lovely $218,650. So sweet.
We've said it once, we'll say it again. There are other things we should be spending this kind of money on. Oh yeah, and then there's offsets.
No, not Cardi B's hubby, but rather a loose promise between a buyer and a seller that they will be rewarded later for buying their product. What happens is, a government will put out a request saying, "Hi, we're in the market for so-and-so." Bids are put out by companies who can provide whatever it is that is being requested.
How do you secure getting the bid and therefore the money? You promise stuff. It's like a buy one, get one free sale. It gives the receiving country the illusion that they are better off with this deal because it will boost up their economies in the long run. But the reality of it is that most offsets are based largely on empty promises. The World Trade Organization has banned offsets from every industry and sector except the defense trade. Damn. Turns out North America and Europe are responsible for over 80% of all offset offers around the world. And because there's no way of knowing if these promises are honored or not, it's likely that those 80% of offsets were owed to countries in the global south who have yet to be paid.
The following is a story of a government who, in a deal with an arms company to get a bunch of new helicopters, added a 30% offset. Meaning the arms company was obliged to spend 30% of that money in the buying country.
In 2010, the Indian government decided it was time to treat themselves and their VIP politicians to 12 helicopters from the Italian firm Finmeccanica. How did they choose Finmeccanica to be the supplier, you ask? Well, by putting in place a tough selection process.
Tough?
Yeah, maybe not. India is a pretty mountainous country. Helicopters that were to be purchased needed to be able to fly up to 6,000 meters. That's all well and good, except Finmeccanica won the contract, whose helicopters only flew up to 4,500 meters. What is the point of buying 556.2 million euros worth of helicopters if they can't even fly in large parts of the country? Fast forward to 4 years later, and the Indian government cancels the contract. Word on the street was the transaction was pretty criminal.
Apparently, someone's family member received money from Finmeccanica during this selection process.
And then, 2 years later, the Italian courts found 2 execs from Finmeccanica guilty of what? Corruption relating to this affair. I know, yeah. We didn't say it. The Italian courts did. This strategy, securing strategic relationships through weapon sales, is particularly worrying when you realize that it's usually the seller country promising a big return to the recipient country's economy. But essentially, this rarely happens. And these countries are owed billions of dollars in these offset agreements. Over 2,000 years ago, 544 BC to be exact, Sun Tzu, the Chinese general and military strategist, understood that armies have limited resources. Any defense spending that takes place should be based on sound analysis. Hence, his proposal to use spies. Basically, man said if you want to cut your losses at war, you need to know who and what you are facing.
As you may recall from our previous video, we are being misled to believing that the reason we spend so much on our defense budget is to make us more secure. But without sound analysis of our national security and arms trade, more defense spending is actually making us less secure. Feel free to debate this down below.
While the arms market has influence in decision-making, it should not be taken as the only source to base sound analysis of national security on, as it's a market that is heavily profit-driven and not liable to human rights law.
From university partnerships with the arms trade to governmental corruption, the influence arms companies have on our society is much bigger than many of us can imagine. What we do know is that we're facing non-military threats such as pandemics and climate change. Climate change isn't going to be tackled by fighter jets. This is why it's vital for us to start in one of the places the arms trade lives: universities. We have to demilitarize our education in order to not repeat the mistakes of the past.
Next up, we will be debunking the myth that we can control where weapons end up. Between blowbacks, misuse of goods, and little border controls, the book Indefensible says it best. Weapons simply don't go away.
See you in the next video.
I'm here in Barcelona supporting demilitarization of our education curriculum. I want our children and young people to grow up understanding our history, where people come from and what they can achieve. And that the solutions to the world's problems are not found in bombs and guns. They're found in people's brains, they're found in laboratories, they're found in fields. And it is about the liberation of the mind that is so important. So this wonderful group of students that are here with me now in Barcelona, they probably don't realise it, but they are the future.